Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to round 7 of the Le Mans Ultimate Championship, right here on RaceFace.Pro. My name is Stephen Koenig. Joining me in the commentary box, none other than the Italian stallion himself, Cameron De Bastos. Cameron, welcome to Monza, welcome to Italy, and version 1.0 of Le Mans Ultimate. The time had stepped out, brought in the ELMS. It also brought a few challenges, which all our drivers seem to have overcome before the start of this race.
Yeah, well, good evening, Stephen, and good evening, everybody in the virtual grandstands. Yes, finally we are. We have a sim. Like Mercedes now out of that alpha or early access release, whatever term you want to use in the dev world. But unfortunately, we did have. It's always as new things. There's some little bugs, but hopefully tonight we're going to see some great racing from our drivers out there in Monza. But Stephen, I have to correct you. I'm not an Italian stallion. I'm more like a Portuguese roll on the side with a Boerewors on the inside, as well as Happy Heritage Day to all of our South African viewers and drivers out there as we have celebrating our heritage here in South Africa on the 24th of September. But really, it's all down to the action out there tonight at Monza, the Temple of Speed, where we saw the fastest race in F1 history, I believe, 2 weeks ago. Around here, we just won by Max Verstappen, of course, but now we're going to see how the hypercars as well as the E3s are going to stack up against that record, even though I don't think they're going to break it. But I'm eager to see how the drivers are going to go from their side.
Well, that's it. Head down to the circuit. We've got our cameras at the ready and really looking forward to a good run here. I've got to say, Heritage Day, my family, is always fuel. It is always burning rubber, and it is all about putting the hammer down. And I've got to say, looking forward to this because you've got the championship points as we're getting closer to the end of the season. I mean, this is round 7. We've got literally tonight and next week, and that's it for season 2.
Yeah, I'm looking at this board of hypercars. It's quite close, with Crystal's not even being close, running away from his teammate with about a 52-point gap. Crystal's leading the way there in the hyperclass, followed by Hypercar in second place. And then in third, we've got the lone running Omnius Gaming of Brandon Kruger rounding out our third position there with a phenomenal drive last week, which we didn't see, unfortunately, due to some technical issues. And then also Yakakutsa closing up behind him. But in fifth position, running out our last running hyperclass cars is the likes of Jean Verfiers, hoping to snatch that fourth position away from Yakakutsa and break the Ferrari top second, third, and fourth in our standings. And then, fortunately, Bernard Barkhuizen having 4 DNSs in the last 4 rounds, meaning that his championship dreams are over for making a mark in that class. Jumping over to our LM GT3 class, we have Carl Oosthuizen battling it out with the likes of Dion Cup. Now this is where it is shocking, Stephen. His absolute domination of 4 consecutive wins and only 1 second place has made the gap between himself and Dion Cup, our second place position, absolutely gigantic. About 72 points being the difference between the two of them. So that is Carl running away with that championship and hoping to not lose it to Dion Cup, having phenomenal drives, who has done it before. In third, we have Johan Blichnoot from Omnius Gaming's GT3 side, hoping in third there. So both Omnius team cars running third in both respective classes. And then fourth, we have Andrei Mateshka running out our top 4 there. And Bego Grobe sneaking into 5th for our top 5. In 6th, we've got Jody Sederman, followed by Esteban Petrunas, that's Lamborghini. Unfortunately, not seeming to start last round at all, with no points scored during that position. And in 8th position, we have Dane Brown, followed by Jason Farmer and Michael van Ryan, rounding out our GT3 top 10. In 11th, we've got Jeff LaRue, followed by Dennis Gillett, Ulrich Kleinhaus, and Chris Heineke, as well as Hilmerton, making our top 15. In 16th, we've got Conrad Martin, Grant Leclerc, Harry Duplessis, Arno Kraus, and Gideon Bernardi. Now, stick with me, it's a bit of a big grid as we are on our final 9 positions for our GT3s. Wessel Verda coming in 21st, followed by Mike McGeer, Gerard van der Vente, JD Geldenhuys, Viete Buerta, Hilton Nixon, Carl Steeg, Mondre Klaassen, a very late entry, not really having started any race so far, and hoping to make a point along with Carl Steeg in the final rounds remaining for our championship. And then Nathan Watt only doing 2 races, and from there on not having any races started. So the championship at the top is almost immediately closed off with Crystals running away a lot in the Hyperclass car and Carl Oosthuizen running away in our GT3 class. However, the battle still rages on for second and third in both classes to see who's going to snatch those final silverware positions at the end of the championship.
Yeah, it is going to be a absolute killer of a one. Well, we got Crystals going around so far, top of the leaderboard with a 135.158. Begor Krobler sitting in second place with a 151.8 in the GT3s. Sorry, that was beaten out now by Mordre Klaassen, putting in a 151.3 on that last run, having it a proper go. With that being said, Cam, I think we're in for an absolute treat to see the drivers coming through. However, a bit of an odd one, as not many of the hypercars have got across the line to get a valid lap in. We got the likes of Jakob Kutzer, who got himself a lap with a 136.4, but for Fears, Kleinans, Kruger, not getting a time. And I don't think Kruger is here tonight. For Fears, trying to put the hammer down, has also been battling with his Toyota. He's up in Sector 1, but does tend to taper off. However, for our GT3s, different story. Klaassen currently leading out the pack. And as we've got all the trees going and getting in the way, our drivers trying to figure out what is going to be the big plan here to make it work, to get that little bit more of a drive here at the beautiful circuit of Monza.
As well, we did speak about it earlier, Stephen, before we went live, myself and you, about the impact that we're going to have about this fresh release that has been pushed out by the likes of Studio 397, I believe, can't remember the entire name, but the devs behind the LMU simulator. And of course, with every new technology that gets released, there's always bugs. But I do think some technology issues has fallen onto most of our grids, at least as I believe this is our smallest grid we've had in the entire championship for both hypercars and LMGT3. But to quickly shift back into our qualifying, taking a look at Mordre Klaassen there, really a shocker, I believe, going to throw a spanner into the works here with a new entry and might disrupt a bit of the championship, with Mordre Klaassen going again with the Porsche, which is a staple car that is used in both ACC and now also in LMU. So it's a car that is used to, but physics and handling will be different. Braking will be completely different. You can't just brake past the point of the brakes normally that you would do in ACC, which is a bit of a characteristic. So easy to lock up here if you're not used to it, but I do believe the Pendacity driver has spent some time experiencing the car and figuring out how that's going to work. But now take a look at the top game. Pretorius, the Lamborghini, the lone Italian brand in the GT3 class, well, that we're currently seeing here, is setting the pace, making the Italians proud by not breaking this spaghetti and absolutely masterfully cooking them, making sure it's al dente by taking the top spot so far in qualifying, but followed by Andrei Mateshka in the BMW, hoping to cover some points that he might have lost in earlier races and making it back up, followed by Dennis Gillett, another shocking driver who is showing some phenomenal pace. A driver who's been in the mid-pack to the back of the pack during the run of the season and is now sitting in third with 7 minutes 30 to go of this qualifying session. But I do believe that it's not something we can just write him off, because Monza is a track that many of our drivers know. It's a track that we all driven in other sims. It's a track that we're more knowledgeable about, and I believe we're going to see some great times there as we see Michael van Rooyen returning to previous fantastic shape that we've seen him before, where we saw him leading the pack in Fuji, but unfortunately having some issues there and dropping a bit back, but now already setting another good overall lap, snatching that top position back from Pretorius, and Dennis Gillett also putting in another flying lap, taking second.
Yeah, 150.666 for Michael van Rooyen. Dennis Gillett with 150.8. Still lots of time to be had out there. And so far, our hypercars, Crystals, Johan Kleinans, Jean Verveers and Jakob Kutzer lead out the pack. Mordre Klaassen, Michael van Rooyen, Etienne Pretorius into fourth place. Macheka down into fifth. Jeff LaRue in sixth place. Begor Krobler lies in seventh. Conrad Martin, Dion Cup, and Viertia Buerta currently sit into the top 10. Viertia not going out on the circuit. He's going to call it quits for the moment as time ticks over. 10 seconds left in this race. In this qualifying, and then we will be underway getting towards starting orders. But big talking point, a driver that has scored no points this season, late entrant, second last round of the championship, looking to take full points away from all the drivers on the grid that have been fighting out for the last 6 rounds in a row. How's this all going to play out? The Pandassi driver making that leap to LMU from Assetto Corsa Competizione, now starting to bare his teeth into the championship. Do you think this is a nightmare case scenario for likes of Pretorius, Macheka, Bego Krobler, and Mordred Clausen getting beaten out by Macheka right as they came across the line, and Macheka sitting in a 150.367.
Well, Steve, I will say this. We don't see the usual names, the likes of Blichnote and Westhuizen out here tonight, which is very, very strange. But it is something that was brought into the attentions of last season with our other leagues of bleeding some new drivers. But it's good to always have some new drivers, especially in a new championship or a new series that's running, such as our LMU. But many of the drivers who saw their rivals aren't here already watering at the mouth of them, maybe getting a bit more points to close that gap towards their fellow competitors who's normally outscoring them, and now having a name such as Clausen sneaking in and really just crushing those hopes a little bit with only a 0.023 difference between himself and Matejka. It's gonna be a bit upsetting for many of the drivers, and really wants to maybe see how they can do this, but it's going to be a bit difficult. But now it's all about forgetting what's going to happen and seeing what they can do with Jeff Rue already sitting in 6th. The best, I believe, one of the best positions we haven't qualified so far. But again, it is it's also to note that we have a majority of the drivers not being able to make tonight after having some technical difficulties, and also a bit of celebrating out there as to celebrate the heritage out there tonight. But it's still going to be some good racing out there tonight, and hopefully we're going to see many cars cross the line still.
Jason Farmer, Carl Steeg, Dion Blacknote, Kerry Duplessis, Hilton Nixon, Brandon Kruger, Nathan Watt, Dan Brown, Mike McGear, Bernard Barkes, and Carl Oosthuizen and Vessel Woda unable to make it to the grid tonight. And that leaves the likes of Gideon Bernardi rounding out the field at current, lying in that 22nd position. And unfortunately, we are getting shot to those pits. 22 cars will be starting, 18 GT3s, 4 hypercars. But around the Temple of Speed is going to be an interesting one for many of the drivers. Monza seen as one of the very big homes of motorsport throughout the years for a variety. If you're looking into the likes of GT racing, Formula racing, the likes of go-karting when they run the 250 supercarts, the likes of motorbikes as well. It has been a perfect stable, and it fits very neatly into this lovely groove of being part of Heritage Day, as Monza is always that one that you want to see. We are getting a bit of information that Jan Blitnote is racing, but is starting at the back with Carl Oosthuizen. So the two of them are going to be at the back of the grid, but that is your championship fight that's sitting smack bang at the back.
Maybe getting a bit bored of being in the front and want to fight it through the field, but now I think it's more of trying to avoid the infamous Monza T1 carnage. If you're a sim racer and you've ever done any form of online public lobbies, you'll know the carnage I'm specifically referring to, and we all know very, very, very well. But it's going to be good to see them. It's good to see them still racing, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they make their way through the field. And hopefully we don't have that carnage on lap 1, and we're going to see how that's going to be. But as we take a look here, Jan Kleinans hoping to fight back to get closer to his teammate with the likes of Chris Stolz, but that will definitely not happen. I believe that Persia has just been flying this entire season, although he has set the personal best sector 3 of all the drivers currently out there. And then, Stephen, we got a big fan for you in the grandstand saying, we missed you last week. Don't worry, Zoot. I also missed Stephen, even though he's constantly in my ears, no matter what. But we missed you all out here.
I can tell you that.
We all missed you last week, unfortunately. Having a bit of electrical issues here in the comms box, which gave some problems to the entire production team. But we're good to be back here and excited to bring the action out here, especially this battle between newcomer Clausen and a bit relatively old guard with Matejka, new to the season, new to RaceFace, but really putting on a show and putting the fight between the two. We're going to see how that's going to happen down at turn 1 on Monza.
Well, we can call a spade as a spade. The reason not online was purely on the fact of, you know, Earth is meant to be wired into your house. When you grab hold of a switch, you don't usually become the Earth in the house, and unfortunately, that's what happened. So, it catches out and makes a little bit of a problem, but still alive, not cooked yet. Well, gonna be cooked in the head long ago. Any case, to answer a very good question, because you've actually driven 3 different sims, Cam. One of them being Assetto Corsa and Le Mans Ultimate. And there's always been that question, looking at Mordred Claessens, who lies in 2nd place, how easy it is to transition over from Assetto Corsa to Le Mans Ultimate, which is closer to R Factor 2, but further away from iRacing.
Well, I mentioned earlier, Stephen, and yes, I have experience in both. I can say, in all 3 sims. We actually spoke about it also a bit last year, with the likes of ACC compared to iRacing and LMU. Now, I would class LMU and iRacing a bit close to one another in terms of the braking aspect and how to get the car slowed down. Where ACC is, you have the capabilities, you have to push the brake pedal all the way to the bottom of that brakes at the end of the brake trace in order to really engage that braking system and get it to really work. You're more turning the car with the brakes compared to anything else. When LMU and iRacing, you have to learn the skill of trail braking, where if you max out your brakes, you have the risk of locking up, and unfortunately that damages your tires, flat spotting them, as well as just loosens the grip, where I believe ACC hasn't really mastered that, as well as the suspension model within ACC is, I don't know, you can't really say it. It's not really something that mimics close to what it is. But if you can get the transition, we have many drivers out there with the likes of Grobler, Barkhuizen, as well as Kruger, who does jump between the likes of ACC and LMU quite frequently in both in 1 week. Even tomorrow we might be seeing them race, where it's going to be a bit of a challenge. If you have the capability or the mindset or the mental capacity, one can say, to just switch your brain between, okay, I'm racing ACC now compared to LMU, you'll be able to master it quite quickly. But for people like myself and Steve, we prefer to just race one sim at a time because we tend to struggle to make that quick switch between the 2 of them. As Steve has kindly pointed out to me by saying, listen, you try to brake the car, well, try to normal brake that you would do in iRacing and ACC to get the nose pointed in, and I just went straight across the corner. So it's a bit of a skill that really needs to get learned over time. And I see all the electrical jokes coming through here, Stephen. But here's the thing. You becoming the Earth just showed us how grounded you are as a person. Really humble, you know.
That's it. That's it. Completely grounded, not in the air at all. Those pearly gates were locked and closed. Any case, it's going to be interesting to see the drivers getting ready as we have finished up with qualifying. Number of drivers tried getting their way to the top at the end, however, didn't turn out to be the good run for them. That being said, let's take a look at some of our starting order as we start heading through the grid here at Monza for round 7 of the Le Mans Ultimate Championship. Crystals, Johan Kleinans will lead out the front pack, and they will be followed by the likes of Jaco Kutzer and Jean Verveers in 4th place, rounding out our hypercars that are running. Bernard Barkhuizen and Brandon Kruger are going to be waiting out at the back. Andre Macheka will be starting out with Mordred Claessens on the front row for our GT3s. Michael Van Rooyen and Dennis Gillett will be chasing each other down. Jeff LaRue, Esteban Pretorius, Dian Kopp, Bego Grobler in 8th place. 9th is Conrad Martin. Rounding out our top 10 will be Viertia Buerta. JD Sitterman, along with Ulrich Kleinans, Chris Heineke, JD Gildenays, Gerald van der Vente, Arno Kraus, Grant Leclerc, Gideon Bernardi, Carl Oosthuizen, and rounding out the pack will be Jan Blichnout to fight his way through. And this is going to be an interesting time. It is going to be an interesting fight for drivers to ensure they up in the running order and ensure they're going to be fighting for the championship. I mean, this is into the closing stages of the race, well, of the championship, and it's all going to come down to who can put the hammer down first, as Crystals and Johan Kleinans get the green from our race control to start moving their way up and getting ready to battle it out drivers trying to get any bit of temperature into the tires and brakes. The teams having their final bit of communication as well. And it does look like the sim is also a little bit tanky at the moment. So it should clear up in hopefully a couple of seconds, because I mean this is going to be a really tough time. Crystals, Johan Kleinans, side by side with one another. Jaco Kutzer and Verveers rounding out the top 4 of the hypercars. They will stare down turn 1 and getting ready to put the hammer down on these cold tires. Macheka, Mordred Claessen's first time the two of them are going to be fighting out as Crystals gets a jump on his teammate. Goes to the center of the circuit. Kleinans around the outside. Now just banging wheel to wheel, locking out Jaco Kutzer. Nowhere to move. Waits in, takes the dive, locks up the brakes. He goes and slots in between Kleinans. Stuck on the outside. Verveers gets out of shape. Macheka has a clean run. And it does look like Dennis Gillett getting a little bit lost in the sauce on the exit. Essian Pretorius now getting swallowed up by Michael van Rooyen. Jeff LaRue tucking in right behind as our GT cars look to battle it out at the moment. And drivers all trying to figure out what is the big game plan here.
It's some hard-mouth moments there heading into turn 1 for Kutzer in the hypercross car there. And I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, please bear with us as we do see about the millionth micromilliseconds there on our timing tower. Not something that's in our capabilities. We're trying to see if the sim will sort itself out, as this is a known little issue on release day. But back to the action on track, we see Jeff LaRue fighting it out with the likes of Bego Horber, who we thought was not around on the circuit in order to take the fight to the other drivers, is currently in 7th, making his way past the likes of Jeff LaRue, side by side into the first left-hander off Ascari. Not the best place you really want to do an overtake, especially on the brake, side by side over the curbs, rumbling right, and then quickly gets thrown into the air, Jeff LaRue, as he hits those rumble strips, and then getting back out wide into the long backstretch as they head into Parabolica, which is a hard braking corner. Now on the old circuit is part of, well, semi-part of the old oval circuit that used to be ran around here in the very early years of Formula 1, which was cancelled because of it being extremely bumpy and damaging the cars in quite a bad shape. But take a look again, Esteban van Rooyen trying to pull the gap and hunting down the likes of Michael van Rooyen, but Mike van Rooyen has checked out already, hunting down or trying to get close to Andre Matejka, but Mordred Claessen getting the jump on Matejka and seem to be pulling quite a gap. Now, we did speak earlier into turn 1 that Matejka seems to have gotten a good run, but it looks like they switched back. It seems like there's a battle going on between the two of them, side by side maybe, but really trying to fight it out there with the two of them. But quite interesting to see what's going on here.
Well,
Climbing
there
tower.
is our
Side by
battle of the
side.
GT3, side by side. Macheka stuck on the outside, has Mordred look big around the inside. He's going to have a bit of a switch up here. It's going to be a tough fight. Mordred trying to get it all under check as we jump on board. Looks to hold the second right-hander, wheel to wheel. No give. Macheka gets the drive out, but Dennis Gillett immediately gets into the fray. I do also want to talk about the hypercars, because a bit of a change there. Jaco Kutzer is in second place. Kleinans down into third. Verveers still holds fourth place. But our GT3 field has come alive and unglued at the sharp end of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Some great racing side by side action. I was wondering why the timing tower was making so weird jumps between the two names there, but they were side by side into turn 1 and out of turn 1 as they exited the long front straight and going into the first bend there, going into Variante, the second chicane. I'm not going to bother mentioning the names because otherwise I'm going to be butchering some Italian names and then I will be expelled. Yeah, Variante Alto, whatever it is, but otherwise my family might, well, my brother-in-law might just give me some Italian talking to with some very rude hand gestures. But take again, GT3 battles up ahead, going into Parabolica. Who's going to be best on the brakes? Mordred Claessen hugging that inside. Matejka running out wide, hoping to get a bit more speed, going down that long front stretch. And Mordred Claessen slotting in directly into the slipstream, hoping to get a bit of a pull along with the BMW, who we already know has gotten phenomenal straight line speed compared to the likes of any other car. But take a look on this bumper cam, the front splitter cam, Mordred Claessen in that slipstream, getting the suction needed, hard on the brakes, trying to close down, but Matejka just being able to get a better run out. Seems to be the German car being favored here at the Temple of Speed. And look at that acceleration out of the first chicane, already putting about a half a second gap, pretty much gonna spitball here, but already putting there no side by side anymore for this time round, as Matejka settled into his groove and getting the gaps needed to make sure he does not have to worry about a pink and white Iron Davis Porsche in his rear view mirrors, but runs a bit deep into the first part of the second chicane, and that allows Motor Claassen to close right up as they go into the the first Lesmo, which is a very short run before it hits into the second Lesmo, and then a long straight into Ascari.
Now, and you can see under braking, the Porsche really getting tucked up underneath, trying everything possible to keep on going. It's still a tough time out there for the drivers, and they got to be well in mind of, hey, this is a long race. This is going to take a little bit of time. We got to start thinking about strategies coming into play here so they don't have any difficulties with fuel. Back up to our Hypercars Crystals. Jaco Kutzer still trying to open up the gap to one another and really going and fighting their way through. We have got the likes of Johan Kleinans, who is holding in third place at the moment. No real change from up to there, along with Jean Fiers. It's all stable with our Hypercars. But take a look, Michael van Rooyen, Dennis Gillett, they hanging on to the front runners on the coattails, but trying to get a little bit further. Esteban Pretorius holds 5th place in the GT3s. Jeff LaRue putting the hammer down is in 6th place. He did have the fastest lap of the race. That was just taken by Motor Claassen with a 151.385. And LaRue has got every look for the inside into turn 1. A little bit squirmy under braking, trying everything he can to slow the car down, and just stops it dead on the apex. Pretorius had to come out of the throttle there and losing a bit of time. A little bit further back, Dion Kopp and Virtia Buerta battle it out with Jody Cinnamon in that 10th position. Charges on, but I do want to figure out, where is our championship runners? Because there's Kyle Oosthuizen on the back of Conrad Martin. They've got Gerald van der Venter behind him, and Johan Blicknote trying to chase even further back from there. So not a good run for Blicknote to see the championship lead opening up. Unfortunately, custom liveries not being shown here tonight because update.
Release day. It's release day issues, or anybody who works in tech will know it always happens, as that seems like the camera tech also being a bit scrambled, as well, just Italian. Maybe they get tangled with the pasta, you never know. But unfortunately, that is not what they both wanted. They both said they're going to start from the back, and now they might have wanted to spice up the championship, but I think it's gone in reverse, with Kyle Oosthuizen evenly inking out a bigger gap compared to the likes of Blicknote. But let's take a look at our lead battle again. Motor Claassen, newcomer, and not really making it easy for the likes of Matejka to pull away through. Matejka, our first international racer to really compete against in our LMU Championship, but a distinguished championship driver in LMU, as well as R-Factor 2 in other competitions, now bringing his skills and talent to our RaceFace.Pro Championship. But Motor Claassen trying to prove his mettle in the new sim compared to the likes of his normal sim, which is ACC, and really showing that he can take it to some of these fast guys. But it just seems that, I'm sorry Steven, but that BMW is just a monster down that straight. No matter what Claassen does, Matejka is just able to pull that gap bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and all Aston Martin lovers starting to cry. Michael van Rooyen not having the top end to contend. Dennis Gillett in 4th place, and Jeff LaRue still playing with one another as they battle their way on. Now, I've got to say, some interesting drivings coming into it, because we saw those early attacks a little bit earlier on in the race. However, that has tapered off for majority in towards the middle of the race. I mean, we've got 1 hour and 11 minutes left of this race. It's 1 hour 20, but drivers starting to preserve fuel and tires to ensure they can get to the end. And this is always something you've got to think about in your strategies. You've got to think about how you're going to move forward, what's going to be the best way to really usurp the rest of the field. If you can't beat them in pace, you got to beat them somewhere else. And we do get a little bit of a look. That wasn't Conrad Martin, that was Gerard van der Venter, who put a wheel out onto the dirt, lost a little bit of time to Blicknote, who's got Conrad Martin in his sights, and Kyle Oosthuizen just a little bit ahead.
Yeah, some great driving so far here, but our championship leaders already struggling, struggling to make up some positions up ahead, but Bergnoot seeming to make some quick work with those that were between himself and the likes of Westhuizen, and already in close proximity to Westhuizen, as he only has to dispatch the likes of Van der Venter in order to get right into the rear wing of, Carl is in front of him. But we did speak about it earlier, Stephen, the championship that's going on currently here. We do know Hypercar is pretty much sort of done. Go Crystals has pulled the green flag and said cheers goodbye no matter what. Having a flawless run this season compared to last season, we had to travel it out into the final round in order to see who's going to be the Hyperclass championship or champion there. But in our GT3, it is still pretty much blown open for the final 3 steps, one can say, as the battle is quite close there, as Bergnoot tries to get on the inside of Conrad, but on the inside into the corner of Conrad, but decided to rather back out, but almost a bit too late. Now it's a long run into the second chicane. But take a look. Let's look at our rear view camera here on the rear wing of this beautiful McLaren 720S Evo, even though Steven's going to roll his eyes and look at me right here, as Beaver Teeth BMW gets along the outside, but the inside for the chicane, hard on the brakes, side by side. Who's going to be best on the brakes? Oh, that almost looked like contact from our side. Almost. But here they go, pulling now into the first placement. But here comes the Hyperclass field, working their way through this traffic. Now, Monza, tempo of speed, yes. Nightmare to overtake in a multi-class race. It's a narrow track where you don't have many space, well, a lot of place to overtake with, except for the front stretch, which opens up a bit more. But this makes the job for Hypercars much more difficult, as it is their responsibility to safely overtake any slower class car, no matter what.
It's always a tough time. Conrad Martin tried to fight back. Unfortunately, Bergnoot just had that little bit of straight line speed. Got the cuts. Conrad now falls into the clutches. So Van der Venter, a lot of dirt being kicked up. And I think our Hypercars are making things a lot more difficult for our runners. Chris Stalls down into second place. Jaco Kutzer, for the first time this season, holds first. He gets a slight tap onto the side of Dion Kopp. He's trying to get a little bit of a run. And take a look at Kleinans fighting out his own teammate.
Wow, shocking change for
our contacted! That's Delta Negative gone! Kutzer turned to avoid and took both Delta Negative cars into the wall. Both Delta Negative championship runners in the wall. Severe damage to Kleinans, and that was a hard bounce for the likes of Chris Stalls. And Kleinans retires the car. Kleinans has retired the car.
Steve, can you quickly give me 2 seconds? I'm quickly going to pack my bag, catch a flight to Qatar or Dubai, and he'll be found, because I think I might have just complimented Kirsten by saying he had a flawless run. Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. I will not be back again. Bye.
Well, it's Kleinans out of the race. Grant Leclerc out of the race. Cole Stig, unfortunately, out of the race as well, as they solid DNFs. But our Hypercars, a massive change, with Jaco Kutzer trying to avoid the GT3, swept across, caught the nose of the likes of Chris Stalls. That turned him into the likes of his own teammate, and bang, gone. That is, unfortunately, 2 Hypercars, a very second hand. Kutzer running away from this now. He's got no one to play with. Jean Verfiers gets a little bit out of shape, coming out of the left-hander, bouncing over the curb, but the Toyota, for the first time this season, is in contention for a podium, second place. And I've got to say, this is going to be an interesting one. The Trail Bullets team have been chomping at the bit. Jean Verfiers has had this once before, actually, and he is now in contention to get a second place on the points. Chris Stalls has got severe damage. He's just trying to limp the car back to the pits, and this is not looking good for the Peugeot. You can see fighting with the car, just trying to get it going. The frustration. Look at that steering angle. That tells the story here.
Yeah, unfortunately, that car is going to go into the pits and up onto the dollies and push back into the garage. That is front suspension damage that will need to be looked at. But unfortunately, that is his perfect first position run, coming to an abrupt end. Oh, loses it again into Parabolica. That is even more damage to the car. I mean, he doesn't have a rear wing, Steven. He's gone back to the previous spec Peugeot with only a few fancy, smashy uprights on the rear, but but there is no wing. So pretty much everything that made that car fast is now gone. But as you mentioned, John Verveers had a previous chance of getting on the podium at Spa, and unfortunately lost it out to the likes of Brandon Kruger. Now there's no Brandon Kruger, there is no Bernard Barcase, and there is no Chris Stall for Delta Negative team to take it away from him. He can pretty much, if he keeps on circulating, keeping it clean, he will have cemented his first, well, podium of the season. So that is something that he really hopes, hoping for the Toyota to go, especially as a Toyota fan myself, that he gets across there. But let's take a look again at our GT3 battle here. Mondre Klaassen seems to have used up a bit too much of his, well, I can say tires, as he's fallen back to the gap in terms of Andrzej Matejko, so opening it up a bit more, but only have the likes of Michael van Rooyen behind him now, who's gotten closer. We're making, you could say it, Aston Martin fans crying, but I think some Aston Martin fans might be cheering a bit more as they're taking down the German powerhouse that is the likes of the Porsche manufacturer. But close behind him is another German manufacturer in the likes of Jeff Leroux. But here we have the Esteban Pretorius, the lone Lamborghini out on circuit, the leading Italian manufacturing brand, hoping to bring some pride and some joy to the Italian fans sitting alongside the track, cheering the Italian raging bull on, as the Italian prancing horse seems to have fallen flat on his face. He's only 2 positions behind.
Well, I mean, you've got the Ferrari Yuka Kutza and the Hypercars, but got to talk about the avoidance on trying to avoid Esteban Pretorius, landed up in front of Viertia Buerta. Dion Kopp had a little tap. He also saw the carnage that went on. Kyle Oosthuizen, Jody Sitterman as well, and Bego Frobel. I mean, these GT3 cars suddenly had hypercars everywhere and bouncing off the walls. There's nothing much you can do other than just put the power down and go, as we do see Dennis Gillett getting overtaken by Johan Blicknote up on the inside. Clean overtake and continues to march on. That has been a bit of a race for it, but unfortunately we do have a couple of cars out of this race, and I'm not sure if Chris Stills is going to be able to get the car back on track with suspension damage that bad on the Peugeot 9X8, which brings us down to Yuka Kutza and Verveers to hold the fort for the hypercars. But our GT3s, as we take a look at Bego Frobler and Jody going and fighting out the Aston Martin versus the Mercedes. Now, this is always a raging debate between the two V8s, both utilizing the same engine and both going and putting that extra step through it. Both being front engine, having the same width and length as one another. Slight differences come into play for design other than the bodywork and aero. Mechanically, these two are the same.
Yeah, well, you're the more technical side of that. I'm just normally the guy that goes out. And there's Crystals coming out of the pits. Now, speaking of Crystals, but quickly jump back to these guys. But as you mentioned, pretty much the same engine displacement. Only thing is just body shape being different and maybe some aero package. But Crystals out on circuit. Now the question is, how badly damaged was that steering rack? Were the team able to get it across the line? Crystals already being 2 laps down knows that his hopes for a win is over. But if he can get the car circling around and still finish third, it still points in the bag. Because to finish and get good points, you have to finish regardless of what happened. You don't want to throw away a round by not finishing, because remember, we do have our drop round where the drivers will lose their worst position and of the entire championship, and that will be Crystals here now, losing the standings and still having a streak pretty much. But looking at the steering, it looks really sore, but I'm pretty much sure every time he has to pass a GT3 now, his heart will jump into his throat as he has to make the moves here now, and being quite selective of where he makes these moves. But quickly jump back, Steve. We did talk about the Mercedes versus the Aston. Look at that. The Mercedes already pulled away from the Aston. Choof chaff, job done, goodbye. I'll see you next time around.
Well, as we keep an eye on the racing at hand, Checo, the Claessens, Michael van Rooyen, all keeping hold of the top 3. Yuka Kutza, Verveers and Stills take the top 3 of our hypercars at current. But we do get a bit of report from the drivers down in pit lane. Now, they're joining our amazing petrol heads out there in the virtual grandstands, along with our sponsors. But we've got to talk about this because JD Hildenaes, one of the drivers that started the race, unfortunately not able to see it through to the end due to technical difficulties, and a bit of an odd one. It seems like
Yes.
the coupling that holds the steering to the steering rack itself has come adrift, and the entire steering pulled out. It's disconnected and is currently sitting on his lap in the pits. Not what you want to have, considering, if I remember correctly, JD Gildenace is utilizing something that's similar to an NRG quick release, and that means that there's one of the ball bearings on the inside that's given up the ghost and needing a bit of repair work, but not what you want to have when you're heading towards a corner here at Monza, getting close to 300 plus kilometers an hour. Suddenly you're steering, landing in your lap, and you're just going and seeing a right-hand corner coming at you.
Oh, yes, Stephen. I mean, I've heard of quick releases before, but I don't think that falls under the category of being a quick release. That will be an instant release, and then, or as you mentioned, just looking straight out into the car and going like, well, this is going to hurt. Next moment, you'll be glad that you don't have a steering wheel, because otherwise you will have to injure yourself. But bad to hear. I'm sorry to hear that, JD. Fortunately, having a massive technical issue on your side, and unfortunately having to retire the car. Normally, I would say try and get the car sorted and get back into the sim, but I don't think we're going to get you back out on sim with that size of a technical issue, and hopefully get it sorted before the final round of our championship. Back on track, we're taking a look at the likes of Esteban Pretorius battling it out with Vietia Buerta. Now, it's now Italian versus British manufacturer, and both of them are, well, the Vietia is going into the slipstream, hoping to get pulled along and closer to the likes of Pretorius. But Pretorius is, as we mentioned before, one of those sleeper agents, one of those sleeper drivers that we haven't really seen much in the championship until we came to Spa. And from then on, he's been a prominent name that has been spoken many times by ourselves in the commentary box, as he's made a name for himself and hoping to get closer to the top steps of the championship.
It's always going to be an interesting one as he tries to put the hammer down a little bit more. You can see cycling through the gears, keep his foot flat, then it's hard on the brakes, bleeding off nice and gently, bit of trail braking coming in, gently feeds the throttle back up until he gets flat on the gas, and that's what he needs to try and close up to the Lamborghini that has got a lot of run on him. And Esteban Pretorius is not holding back as he goes around. We jump on board and take a look at some of his driving styles as well. You can see on and off the gas, he wants the car to pivot quite a bit here. He wants the nose to snap in, the rear to kick out, and so he can keep his foot on the throttle as much as possible, heading down the long straight into 250 plus kilometers an hour, hard on the brakes, bleeds off a little bit late to try and keep ahead of the Aston Martin, but Vietia hangs on the back of him, trying to make it work, not having an easy time out there, and definitely getting buffeted around every step of the way.
Unfortunately, well, good to see the inputs of how these cars are driving and how the drivers are managing it, but it brings back again, you mentioned again, trail braking, Stephen. A very unique skill that's not really much learned in other sims, and if it is on another sim, it's not always translatable directly to another sim. But interesting, here we have Vietia Buerta having a much closer run to the likes of Esteban Pretorius, right underneath the wing of the Raging Bull, pulls out of the slipstream, hoping to get alongside it, hoping to get a bit of a side draft next to him, side by side into the first braking point, hard on the brakes, and Esteban just bailing out earlier, not aiming to get getting contact with the likes of Vietia Buerta. But Vietia Buerta says, thank you very much, I'm going to be the best of the late breakers, and I will take that position away from you.
Yeah, quick pull away as we look underneath off the wheel arch, and got to see the difference. The Lamborghini not quite having the straight line, losing a little bit by not being in the slipstream, but not to take away. Here comes Jaco Kutzer from our Hypercars. That's going to make life a little bit more interesting for both our GD3s as he puts the hammer down and trying to come through and waiting out, being a bit patient. Quick look on the inside as we get a turnover. We see the Lamborghini quickly dispatched as they slow down, and now it's just flat out, and there's the power difference between the Hypercar and the GT3s as they move on.
Yeah, some phenomenal acceleration from those hypercars, not using just the engine but also the hybrid system, which makes them the hypercar, with Ferrari using, I believe, a four-wheel system that means equal energy gets deployed to all 4 points of the axis. So both front and sides of the axle, as well as the rear axle all there. But only after a certain top speed or a certain speed gets reached does that the hybrid system kick in, and they re-energize that hybrid system every time they hit the brakes. But you only have a certain amount. So in endurance racing, what happens is the driver getting out of the car responsibility to make sure that the driver getting into the car has enough battery in that car in order to use it for their stint. Because I believe believe me when I say it is quite the unpleasant experience of needing to rebuild a battery in order to make sure your fellow drivers have enough and you don't when you get into the car. But as you take a look here, with the likes of Michael Verwey sitting in third, now we're really losing a bit of pace to the likes of Michael van Verwey, not really able to see the gap here with the telemetry being a bit wonky on our side. And again, apologies to our viewers out there in the virtual grandstand who love to see it, but unfortunately having some issues there. Michael Verwey really brings some pride to the British manufacturers by being the only non-German car to be in our top 4 at this moment. The VTBs are hoping to break that little bit of their making 2 British cars in the top 4 and 2 German cars in the top 4, with currently Jeff LaRue holding the last spot in our top 4 there with the Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo 2020 spec we were talking about 2 weeks ago, and made fun of the different variations regarding the word Evo. If you want to hear that rant, feel free to go back to 2 weeks ago to another stream and hear how myself and Stephen discuss the intricacies of Evo and why it's not really an Evo spec.
Well, Dion Kopp, not going to worry about that in the 296, has got Vego Hrobler in the GT3 Mercedes AMG Evo on his tail. The V6 turbocharged, really nimble through the corners, however, a little bit of a bounce over the curves, compromising some of that pace. Vego Hrobler hot on the heels, trying to close up as quick as possible, not having an easy time out there, really trying to focus on late braking, try to bring himself a bit closer to the mid-engine battles. But the tempo of speed is all about flattening out the aero, making yourself have the least amount of resistance possible, and make sure that you focus on the top end. This is a circuit that if you want to go and play with a little bit more wing to get a little bit more downforce on the car, you're going to be sitting at the back of the field in 2 ticks. You have to go and trust in your mechanical grip on these cars. Now, we are down to 53 minutes of this race. Still a lot going on, and our GT3s having to deal with the likes of Chris Stills, who's still trying to make his way through. Dennis Gillett is now in the box. He's having some repair work done to that McLaren.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a McLaren without a rear wing, wondering if he got clipped by a hypercar, because that normally happens when you either have contact with your rear, which pushes you around and clips the rear wing on the other car, or if you go rearwards into a barrier. And to have that happen at Monza, to be a quick damage will normally be on the inside of the corners, or on the infield, and not normally on the outside. As on the outside of the circuit, there is a lot of kitty litter which will slow you down quite significantly and not have contact with the wall unless you carry a lot of speed. But again, we mentioned the likes of Chris Stills now having to work his way through the GT3 field again, 2 laps down from the likes of the other hyperclass cars, and still proud to say, well, happy to say that he's still going around circulating and getting those points, which will still contribute to his championship and hopefully not have that much of an impact. But I do believe that the likes of Kutsar and Fafiers are very, very happy as they can finally say that they are on the top 2 steps of the podium. Well, knock on wood, don't want to completely curse somebody else yet this season. I haven't done it this entire year, I believe. No, wait, no, I did earlier this race. I keep on forgetting. But hopefully it's going to be something else. As we get a nice little comment there from Saki Goes Bossy saying, wow, that brake disc low at turn 1. Well, we did mention before, it's a lot of energy going through these cars. They have a high top speed as they have to immediately brake to get the car to stop, specifically our hypercars, and that energy goes from the braking system, from those brakes, and gets pushed into that battery, which will then later be deployed, which forms part of the hybrid system. The hybrid system. Let's take a look at Vego Hrobler, currently in 11th, trying to fight off second place in our championship, Mr. Jan Bluchnoot. Side by side into the second chicane. We go hard on the brakes, now right following one another. Not really wanting to risk too much with Bagel Hogler, still thinking of his championship to make sure he can close the gap and capitalize on the likes of Bluchnoot and Westhuizen starting from the back. But Westhuizen has already made quick work with him, as I see he's already 2 positions ahead of Grobler. Now Grobler trying to keep the likes of Bluchnoot behind him, and Dion Cup also hoping to do the same. But it's a close battle out here for these two, as they're hoping to have some fun out there, but also trying to avoid the carnage as best as possible, as you see them heading into the first left-hander of Ascari.
It's going to be hard on the brakes to try and get it done. A slight bleed off, and to just carry as much momentum into the corner, over the curbs, really going and attacking those sausage curbs. It's meant to stop you from taking too much of the circuit. Well, Razor Iodite's up enough, and you don't have to worry about it as Bluchnoot trying everything desperately, nipping at the heels of Bagel Grobler. He sees Dion Cup, and you can see the Mercedes getting a little bit battling offline as Bagel Grobler tries to bring it all back into check as he battles his way through. I mean, drivers are having a tough time out there. There goes Chris Stalls to try and get an easy pass, but Bluchnoot trying everything he can to make it happen. It's gonna be a close fight into T1. Has he got enough? He looks on the inside, goes for the send, doesn't quite get the apex, and unfortunately has to try go for the cutback and loses out that little bit of straight line, and that puts to bed that trying for a pass.
Yeah, some great racing there and some smart racing in order to choose when to make the move and whatnot, but it's not over just yet, Stephen. A good exit out of that first chicane means that you can get a great run into the second chicane. Bagel Grobler going defensive on to the inside of the next chicane, covering off, and again Macheshka thinking wiser and backs out a bit. But again, a good exit out here can set you up perfectly for Lesmo 1, as we already see a bit of a sniff up on the inside for the first Lesmo, and that has ended any chance of overtaking into the second Lesmo. But again, all around Monza is you have a good exit, you can capitalize on your opponent. Now it's a long run into the Ascari where they pass underneath the old oval section of the old track, and the old layouts used and not really used anymore at all anymore, as they go side by side almost into Ascari, hard on the brakes, hits that first part, and you mentioned those rubble strips. Raise the car high enough and just ride over them, soften up the suspension. They don't even affect you, but it does affect your top end speed down the straight. As the car's higher, there is not enough, I don't know the terms of it, it doesn't get sucked close to the ground as much as possible, meaning that you lose some of those top speed you can get around the long straights of Monza.
Well, Bagel Grobler trying to hold his position in 9th place. Bluchnoot holds 10th. Carl Oosthuizen 7th place, with Dion Karp separating them. And remember, Karp wants to keep as much momentum as possible. He doesn't want to lose out to Bagel Grobler. However, Bluchnoot attempting to try go around the outside, a little bit of a different approach into T1. Bagel Grobler gonna go deep on the inside, late on the brakes, battles to slow the car down. Bluchnoot sweeps across the nose, gets it done, and I think that's it for the BMW to clear the Mercedes, and now can focus on the attack to Dion Cup. But has he lost too much time in this race that he's not going to be able to get back? Crystal's up into 5th overall, doing a 136.066 as the Hypercar's fastest time. Macheka with 150.9 for our GT3s, but it's going to be coming down to points being taken away. Remember, Mordred Claessen's first time in the race. He's got Michael van Rooyen chasing him down, and Michael is clamoring for the points. He wants this to happen. He wants to be sitting on the podium as high as possible to make it work out in his favor. However, Jeff LaRue is waiting in the wings for an opportune moment to go for the pass.
Yeah, I do believe that Michael van Rooyen and his team might be a bit mad underneath their helmets as in the car as well as the pits. So I'm like, you're a newcomer, we're trying to fight a championship, but unfortunately that is racing. And as Daniel Ricciardo said last year, if Max Verstappen wins by 1 point, then I'll be happy that I was the difference that caused that 1 point. Even though that was senior team and junior team, and these are not teams related to one another. But Mark Verhoeven still wanted to make the pass and really maximize with the decision made with the likes of Blichnout and Oosthuizen, starting from the back and hoping to close that gap with regards to his opponents around him in Motor Class, and just trying to have some fun and put his name out there into the LMU universe.
It's always a tough fight indeed. Drivers trying to figure out what is going to be the game plan here, and points on the line. Van Rooyen chases down Mordred Claessens and looking to try and grasp that second place, take it away, hope for championship honors to come into his side. We've also got to point out that the winner of our championship in LMU gets a custom-made trophy from SBR and Rhino Utility to go and put up on their shelves, and that is something every single one of the drivers are aiming to do. They want to show off, hey listen, not only have I proven my mettle out here in just racing, I want to also go and get that trophy, as well as those racing at the back have an opportunity to win as well, thanks to Simulator Cave for the 16,000 Rand aluminium full sim rig. It's an aluminium rig with a seat, 16,000 Rand worth. I mean, that's just incredible, and you can chuck on your own pedals and your own steering onto it, but to have a great base is everything you need to go and start your sim racing career and launch you up in through the racing scene. I mean, this is always where it comes into having prizes, not only for those that are at the back, but those that are fighting out for the top honors.
Well, you mentioned it, Stephen, there, and the thing is, having a good rig is always a good point. It just makes you feel like you're competitive, but you can even still be competitive, even if it's just attaching the wheelbase to your desk and making sure you got some bungee cords to make sure your chair doesn't fly backwards every time you hit the brakes. Everybody starts somewhere. I started at that point, and today we are always there. But Stephen Koenig has got a bit of an interesting fact for us.
Well, I'm going to just talk about this. Dion Cup defending the inside line. Blichnout trying to go around the outside. Contact between the two. We do have a Hypercar that missed his corner, and that brought Begor Krobler into the likes of Cup, trying to dodge a way round. But here comes the likes of Jaco Kutzer round the outside, getting cleanly past, but unfortunately did have a crucial mistake. They lost a little bit of time, and Fears was able to close up a little bit of the gap before diving into the pits. So Fears is in the pits. Crystals is still out racing. I don't think he needs to come back into the pit lane after major repair work has been done to his car. However, Dion Cup lost out the position to Blichnout, who just put his arms in. He bolstered himself up, put his elbows out and said, listen, I'm coming through here with my BMW. I'm not going to wait for your Ferrari, or I'm not going to have Begor Krobler climbing all over the back of me again.
Now, Stephen, we took a quick look at the standings between the two, and currently Dion Cup and Blichnout are fighting for second and third in that championship. So for Dion Cup to see Blichnout go around both these cars must be really heartbreaking for them, and now is struggling to get back behind that BMW and already struggling with it. But now it also has to take into consideration the gap that might close with the likes of Oosthuizen, who's currently still far behind them. Oosthuizen not having the race that he wanted of flying up the field, with Blichnout still being the leader of that championship battle, one can say, with Dion Cup really hoping to get now, as they launch out of Parabolica and onto the long front stretch with drag, well, where slipstream will be a massive part in getting close to it. But now let's see, does the Ferrari have power within the slipstream as well? Blichnout goes down, cuts across the track, drops down low, hoping to break the slipstream, hard on the brakes, and Dion Cup just being too far back, not being able to make the moves. But on the brakes, it looks like the Mercedes is just performing so much better compared to the likes of the Ferrari.
Now Dion Cup in 8th place, Begor Krobler sitting in 9th, looking for the inside. Side by side they go. Little bit of door contact between the two, but Begor is determined to hold the racing line. Late on the brakes, Cup has to back out to make the corner, and that has just cost him yet another position. And here comes the retaliation. Cop around the outside. Oh, little bit of contact between the two. He was trying to get the drive out. Bago had a slight bit of understeer, a look to the inside. No drive through. Gets back into the toe. But that Mercedes is starting to open up the gap. And Dion Cop is starting to get highly frustrated. Little movement on the steering as he's just trying to stick in the slipstream, getting buffeted by the aero wash. Hard onto the brakes. Really trying to carry the momentum. Cuts the corner but quite a bit there to get the run out. Little bit of a tank slapper on the exit. But it looks like he's got just enough pace to slowly creep up to the back of Bago Krobler, heading towards Parabolica.
Just unfortunate for Dion Cup to really lose out that position. Not the race that he would have wanted. But now he's hunting down the likes of Bago Krobler and getting quite close into Parabolica, right underneath that big wing of the Mercedes. And again, it's the long stretch down that front stretch. And in the distance, you can just see the likes of Blechner saying, hey, you guys can fight it out. I'm just going to pull this gap bigger and bigger, making it much difficult for you in order to catch up to me. But Dion Cup trying to fight back, but not having the power underneath him in order to capitalize on the mistakes of others.
I do want to point out another bit of a problem. There is a Toyota suspended, waiting to go out, and Crystals has just taken second place. Jean Verveers has got a problem with his car, and he's not able to see it through to the end. He is stuck with the team trying to work on the car and frantically trying to get it back out on the circuit. Crystals, from having a monster accident that was pretty much a write-off, landing up into his own teammate. Now holding second place for Fears, does leave pits, but in third and a little bit on the back foot to likes of Crystals. That's a huge change up for our podium, as Crystals, who is now putting the hammer down, trying to do everything he can. Andre Macheka, Mildred Claassen, Michael Van Rooyen, Jeff LaRue, no change in our top four. They've got ample room between one another, but Kyle Oosthuizen pushing harder and harder to try and get the run. Esteban Pistorius gets past Conrad Martin. Conrad is just keeping the toe. He's a lap down on them, but he's not going to back out. He's going to utilize the toe as long as possible, with Pistorius leading the charge as he tries to keep ahead of this man over here, Jan Bluchnoot, who's out in the BMW. Gotten ahead of Bago Krobler and Dion Kopp, left the two of them to brawl it out with one another. There's enough space between them, but 38 minutes remain in this race, and pit stops have been playing a very crucial factor here.
Yeah, we've seen this before this season, Stephen, with the likes of pit stops. Pit stops can either throw it right, can turn it upside down right at the very end, as we never know who's going to stop, what the strategy is, and what they are going to do. We've seen people completely skip the entire pit stop strategy because they are able to feel safe just enough. Or, as you said, stay in the pits and really capitalize by lifting and coasting and getting the best out of those cars. But Esteban Van Rooyen really just cruising along with Conrad Martin in his slipstream.
This is Dennis Gillett. It's not Conrad Martin. Both are in the McLarens, but the purple is Dennis Gillett, who's lying in 15th of our GD3s, 18th overall.
You know, just sitting in the slipstream there after getting, I believe, his rear wing falling off or getting taken off there, and now just lifting, coasting, hoping to see to the very, very end. Shouldn't have to lift and coast really, as he should have enough fuel. But we have a hyperclass of Crystals coming through again, hoping to make up some damage limitation compared to the likes of Jaco Kutzer there, who will have to pit, I believe, in order to see it to the very end, and Crystals not having to pit if he was able to burn enough fuel and get him to the very, very end, where Crystals really needing to put the hammer down and close that gap, only being a lap down compared to the likes of Kutzer. But take a look at our virtual energy here. It looks like Kutzer is 1% up compared to the likes of Stalls. Now the question is, did Stalls not put in enough fuel when the car was pushed into the garage for fixes? That is the question that I'm quite curious about.
I've got a funny feeling he wasn't able to get it all sorted out right where he wanted it to be. However, that is going to be a big impact as Jeff LaRue into the box, Andre Macheka into the box, both getting a little bit of work on. LaRue back on the ground, tires have been changed. Macheka going just for fuel, no lift on the car, tells me the story that he's just going to keep it out there. Mordred Claassen still staying out, along with Michael van Rooyen, as they take first and second of the race from Checo, who's pulled into the pit lane and now heading back out there. And Checo still holds the fastest lap with 150.9. Mordred Claassen was only able to get a 151.376 with Michael van Rooyen with a 151.317.
So these two really been matching one another quite close, and Mordred Claassen will be able to say that he has led a lap around Monza in his first outing in LMU. But now is again the question, when will he pit? Will he be able to extend his stint until the very, very end and then make a quick splash and dash, or able to feel safe? Or will Michael van Rooyen be the one to capitalize between the two, the battle between the two of them, and able to say that we got it? But they have to keep an eye on their mirrors. They're both hunting for their first podiums, or I believe the first podium for Van Rooyen also, as in the mirrors we've got the two contenders for the championship. Oosthuizen in third, hunting them down compared to the likes of Johan Blichnout, who's in fifth, hoping to get past the Lamborghini of Pretorius. But we do know that Lamborghini has been quite problematic when he, on the Spa circuit, but now it's going to see who is the best there, who's going to be able to stretch their strategy until the very, very end. We do know that Oosthuizen is able to just, doesn't have such a heavy foot, but is able to keep the pace and still use a little bit less fuel compared to the likes of his other competitors. But now, as I say that, Esteban Pretorius dives into the pits, and right on his rear wing is the Lamborghini, is the McLaren of Dennis Gillett, and followed in is Bego Grobler, and right behind him is Dian Kapp, our top six, jumping into the pits in order to get their splashes done, hopefully not having to change tires, as well as Jody Siedemann in the Aston Martin going in. Here comes Conrad Martin in and getting his stop out the way. This leaves our championship contenders, Oosthuizen and Blichnout, leading out the chase so far in order to see what they are going to do. They started from the back, I believe-ish, and now leading the race, but they still need to do their pit stops. Will they be able to do a phenomenal in-lap, or will they fall short and not be able to overcut the likes of Matejka, Van Rooyen, and Claassen? But Stephen, I can already say this. I believe Van Rooyen had already jumped the likes of Claassen, as those two names switched coming out of the pits. I do not see Claassen. I wonder if Claassen, being new to the sim, thought he needed to change tires, because I do not see him close by, and they both entered into the pits close side by side. Yep, I believe there has been a mashup in the Pandacity pit box saying, okay, we're going to give you tires when tires is not needed, unless the Porsche, which is known, has destroyed its tires.
Yeah, and we've got Mordred Claassen on the chase for Jeff LaRue. He's got Vietia Buerta for a bit of company. These two have got a rivalry of note. If you ever want to talk about a list that is dripping red, well, Vietia Buerta, Mordred Claassen, Logistical Nightmare Racing, and Pandacity. A fierce competitive rivalry that has spanned multiple sims at the same time, are friends with one another off the circuit. While on the track, it is all out racing. I do want to talk about Jaco Kutzer. He has retired the car. Jean Verveers is now into second place, with Crystals leading the race in the Hypercars. Kutzer went from winning to retiring.
I wish we could show people the bewilderment on my face. I mean, what has happened there? I do hope that it is not software related, but rather something else that might have happened. But Crystals, who saw his flawless run coming to an end, is now leading once again. But Verveers already has done his pit stop, meaning you'll be able to see it to the very end. Crystals now can switch into conservation mode, meaning he'll be able to lift and coast and save as much energy in order to minimize the impact of his stop when he needs to do the final splash and dash if needed. Otherwise, he will not have to do the splash and dash if he's able to save enough fuel and see it to the very, very end. What has gone on tonight, Stephen? On release day, things have gone completely out of the dollhouse. Everything has gone all over the floor. We do not know what is going on.
Yeah, that is a definite change up. Carl Oosthuizen leads out the race. Pacheco in second place. A little bit of distance between the two of them, as we do see Up just exiting the top of the circuit. Now charging down to Ascari. Michael van Rooyen holding third place of our GT3. But we're down to 2 hypercars. Crystals and John Fiers. 2 hypercars that in the real world aren't really looked at. The Toyota and the Peugeot 9X8. 2 cars that everyone was okay. They're alright. They keep going. Now all of a sudden leading out the top. Big change, however, is going to come here. Carl Oosthuizen in the pits, not up on jacks. Here comes Pacheco. Is it going to be enough to get ahead of Carl Oosthuizen? We're going to jump on board with likes of Pacheco, who really puts the hammer down. He will see the car stopped in the pit lane on the right-hand side and will retake first place, but only just because when we take a look on the rear wing, we will see one of our GT3s, Carl Oosthuizen, only just starting to roll. Michael van Rooyen takes second place, and we can see off to the left-hand side. There is Carl Oosthuizen losing yet another position to Jeff LaRue, who's all over the back. Crystals now trying to make up a bit of headway, holds up, and now waits for the opportunity, taking a bit of caution on the way through. Does not want to be caught out on the loss, as we do have our cameras swapping around and have Jeff LaRue just keeping in the background. So some tough racing out there, and each of the drivers trying to figure out what is going to work for them. Cameron, I think we're in for an absolute stellar of a race with a lot of wonder of what's going to happen here. I mean, everyone just nipping at the heels, trying to see what's going to work for them and where things are going to land up, as each of our drivers hope to push that little bit more into the race. So, hammer down, all go. Carl Oosthuizen will hold 4th place at current, but is it going to be enough to ensure he gets full points? Or will he suddenly fall into the clutches? Jeff LaRue going and venturing off into the dirt as he tries to make his way through. Jeff LaRue, 3rd place of our GT3s, keeps an eye on the Aston Martin that chases down the likes of Pacheco.
Yeah, well, we did mention earlier, Stephen, the likes of the pit stops being a bit of an effect. Pacheco being able to capitalize on the stop of Oosthuizen as well as Blichnoot, even though they stayed out longer. But having warmer tires, meaning he's able to bring the car around much faster there. Van Rooyen also able to just have a better stop and a bit more knowledge compared to the sim than the likes of the Porsche of Klaassen, and sneaking through and getting a second. But LaRue also there, not someone that we should forget, is holding up 3rd position, but not even in a camera shot. Oh, wait, as I was about to say that, we do see the camera shot there of Oosthuizen just behind the likes of LaRue. This is our top, basically our top 4, all within one shot of one another up the road is the Van Rooyen Aston Martin, and here we have the Jeff LaRue Mercedes, and right in the background is the likes of Oosthuizen's BMW. Now, starting from the back, already in 4th, Oosthuizen is hoping to capitalize on any of mistakes of the other drivers, but now the other drivers need to focus down for the last 27 seconds or 28 minutes remaining of the race in order to capture those podium steps, in order to prevent the likes of Oosthuizen from running away with the championship any further.
That's always a tough time, and another one that battle with the pit stop, Mildred Klaassen, as he chases down Vierto Alberto. We do see Pretorius in the background. Mildred Klaassen went from leading and 2nd place starter now into 6th position. Pretorius trying to make up a bit of headway as he's got Bego Frobler all over the back of them. The 2 drivers know each other rather well. 6 races into the season. Now this is the 7th, as we do see Jean Verfiers throwing the hypercar around as he tries to make a pass around Dennis Gillett. Not having an easy time out there, and really battling for grip, feeling pressure starting to run out for that 1st place on Crystals that has run away with the hypercar class after a tremendous impact. And that is unfortunately one of our drivers going. That would be Dennis Gillett.
Yeah, I just saw the blue there on the rear. That is Dennis Gillett having to go back to the pits after already having it fixed, and into the garage goes that broken McLaren. And that is what happens when you abuse the curbs of Ascari too much. Car gets unsettled, you're not able to have anything, you become an aeroplane, and unfortunately into the kitty litter, and you just become a passenger. Heartbroken for that McLaren team there, unfortunately not seeing the end of the line here. But Stephen, quick question. Jaco Kutzer, we saw him leading, we saw him in the garage, but he's only gone down 3 laps. Is he still circulating out there?
Jaco Kutzer is unfortunately... Yeah, well, actually, he is back out. I thought he was retired, but he is still circulating. He's unfortunately 4 laps down on all the GT3 field. So still trying to put the hammer down, still trying to get anywhere across the line. He will be holding on to 3rd place due to the retirement that happened for Jan Kleinans a little bit earlier on the race. But that Ferrari is on ice at the moment, which tells me they managed to get it out, but there was no tire warmers, there was no protection, and that is just absolute pain. Ulrich Kleinans going and letting the likes of the Mercedes go. They're not fighting for position. Kleinans currently sitting in 15th of our GT3. He hopes to utilize the tow to bring himself a bit closer to the likes of the mighty Lexus. Arno Kraus, who comes across the start finish line holding 14th position. Gerard van der Vente in 13th. Conrad Martin a little bit further up the road in 12th position with his McLaren. Dion Karp a little bit up the road in the Ferrari, trying to make up some time to Jody Sedderman. Jan Bluchnote trying to get the hammer down as they push their way through. So many drivers really focusing on big gaps here. They want to make this work out in their favor. They want to see the battles through. But this race has been a testament of who can push that little bit more. Who's got enough in the tank to fire up at the end of the race and to ensure they can maximize the points here tonight.
Well, that is all about now what's going to happen now, who's able to really use the best there. And unfortunately, for the Panassi team, probably going to be kicking themselves. Inexperience coming there and ruining their chances of a podium. Had phenomenal pace in the early stages of the race. A couple of pit stops, unfortunately, that has thrown out. But Veerle making the move early and now still leading the way in front of Mondre Klaassen, rounding out our top 5 is Buerta at this current point in time. But where is the likes of Jan Bluchnote? We mentioned him earlier. He was in close follow of the likes of Carl Oosthuizen. He is in 9th, meaning he either had a very bad stop or got stuck in traffic, but I do not see a lot of cars around him. So I wonder, but we do see a Lamborghini. Is that damage on the front of that Lamborghini's nose? That is the question that I'm asking myself. So
looks like a little bit of a scuff mark on the right-hand front of the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, trying to battle out with Bego Krobler. You can see the distance he's actually opened up to Jan Bluchnote as well. So possibly the two of them had a little bit of entanglement somewhere along the line, as Bluchnote has traveled down and locked into that 9th place. He's going to lose out a few points to Carl Oosthuizen, who hunts down 3rd. Bego Krobler keeping the charge on with Pretorius, closing up the gap to him. He does see that Iron Lynx Porsche of Mondre Klaassen trying to battle it out against Veerle Buerta. Look to the inside, no drive through, and now it's going to be down the main straight they go, and it's going to be game time for the likes of Mondre Klaassen to make this work out in his favor. Is he close enough to make the pass happen? Right on the anchors, trying to bring it through. Not an easy time. Looks for the cutback. Couldn't quite get the drive. Veerle Buerta holds on to that top 5 in the GT3 field, but not a lot of room to breathe at the moment.
No, absolutely not, Stephen. But we did mention also Veerle Buerta and the likes of Mondre Klaassen. They have a history also. But right behind Mondre, we've got the likes of Bego Krobler, another driver that has shared the track with the likes of Klaassen, and there is history up and down this entire field. There's drivers with history one another, and it's good history. sometimes. But there's also some good rivalries that needs to be set here. But as we see Mondre Klaasen diving up the inside after a bad exit from Buerta at the second chicane and into the first Lesmo. Mondre saying, thank you very much, I'm going to take this position away from you, and now I'm going to try and pull the gap from you. But Vietti Buerta hoping to pull that mighty V8 into position in order to close down the gap again on that screaming inline. I believe V6? No, I don't even know the engine thing.
It's a boxer. It's a boxer 6. That's in that.
There we go. See, I'm the nonsense talker. Steven is a technical talker with all the engine specs needed in front of him. I'm just like to talk a bunch of nonsense. But Mondre Klaasen taking back that 5th position, hoping to get a top 5 for this as he sets his sight on the likes of Carl Oosthuizen. Carl Oosthuizen putting on the line his flawless top 2 finishes. Well, only top 2, the lowest he's ever gotten in his entire championship was 2nd place, and now sitting in 4th, unfortunately dropping that stat to be his worst. But Mondre Klaasen hunting down the likes of Oosthuizen with Vietti Buerta right in his slipstream, hoping to close down the gap and put another dent into Oosthuizen's hopes and dreams of running even further away with that championship.
Well, this here Notorious also losing that little bit of drive to the likes of, there you go, Frobler, as they do have Jaco Kutzer closing up in the Ferrari, trying to make up some time here after a bit of an issue that left him stranded in pit lane for quite some time and needing to really try and figure it out. We are getting further reports from the pits that there has been a couple of drivers that landed up with a bit of a problem. One of them actually being Carl Stig on his first time out. He landed up having a little bit too much antifreeze in the car, well, handling up with the game freezing up on him and not being able to go out. So can we talk about maybe just the cooling working all too well on these cars? Well, with a nice warm and sunny 27 degrees here at Monza, it's definitely not an ideal circumstance to not being able to drive out on a lovely day out in the sun.
Well, I mean, Stephen, it's called antifreeze. I think there's not enough antifreeze to stop it from freezing.
You can't have antifreeze. Fun fact, I mean, in motorsport, you're not allowed antifreeze. Unless it is... They're not allowed... This is a bit of a weird one. Okay, so antifreeze is not allowed in the cars, except a specialized type of antifreeze, which works in the Porsche. And the reason why is due to the Porsche's motor and gearbox and differential. They've got to have a certain component or element of antifreeze to help keep things going. Not just normal oil that runs through all the engines. It's got to have something special added in. So Porsche has got special legislation from FIA which gets given to all Porsche owners that you have to register your Porsche with the Porsche Club that sits in the database. To get that, you are allowed to run it, and it's called glycol, to run in these cars and be able to race. If you don't put glycol in your Porsche, it will not work. It will break, and it will be a very, very, very expensive fix.
Well, I might be a bit on the not so bright side, Steve, but I think glycol is sort of lubricant. Yeah, I only got 50% off in the physics class on not university, on high school. That's why I work in IT and not as a chemical engineer. But Stephen, we're not real world, we are virtual world, and we said you can't use antifreeze in racing. Although technically you can use it in the virtual world if you're brave enough to put antifreeze within your liquid-cooled computer. I would not recommend it though.
Imagine running that. That would be something awfully bizarre.
I mean, if you speak it maybe loud enough, someone will make a video about it and test it out. But to go back onto the action on track, we have the likes of Mondre Klaasen hunting down the likes of Carl Oosthuizen, already dropping the Aston Martin of Vietti Buerta, now running low, but Mondre Klaasen putting the hammer down, and every time we switch between these two cars, we see them getting closer and closer. You just saw there, the back of the shot there is the pink and white Porsche of Monza. But as we say that, Oosthuizen is also closing down the likes of Jeff LaRue. Jeff LaRue jumping from the Ferrari hypercar all the way down into the Mercedes GT3 is two different switches between the two classes, very much different. A lot of downforce and hybrid system compared to the slower and long-bodied GT3 class. Now, the GT3 of LaRue, he's been having, I spoke to him about it earlier this month. I spoke to him in a very late-night chat at the paddock as we were strolling along, I ran into him at the airport as we were traveling between different circuits there, and we spoke about what the issues he's been having this entire season with internet issues happening, where he was struggling to get a proper connection, where the connection to his rig or his car was being problematic and dropping out. So he had to wait for get a better connection, new service provider, and now we see him back fighting. And he says he's happy to be back, happy to be fighting it out, hoping to prevent any form of communications between the car as well as the steering wheel, and hoping to fight a little bit back during this championship, hoping to forget such a horrible championship and coming back in season 3 of our LMU Championship and bring a bit more of a fight to our front runners, because he has the pace, he has the car underneath him, and he hopes that in the next season and in the final stages of the season he's able to bring the fight to the likes of Oosthuizen, Brugnout and Matejka, who's really proving to be quite formidable foes for that mighty Mercedes that he's driving.
It's always interesting to see the drivers pushing that little bit more. Bego Krobler utilizing as much drive as possible, but it's Kyle Oosthuizen who is hunting down that third place. He wants to try and get the pass on the route, under braking, wasn't able to get that drive, and really just trying to dig deep, hoping that he can really make it work out. However, it is still a very difficult drive for the drivers to move forward here at the Temple of Speed. A lot of flat out sections to really push yourself to the limit. However, there's not many opportunities you can climb on the brakes and get ahead of your competition.
Well, it's all about being brave and hoping that you have the best braking ability compared to your other driver, and hoping the car stops well enough. It's something that we saw last night with many moves being made with those different sims. But if you're able to use the brakes to your best ability, you can slow the car down quite well and get right up alongside your competitor ahead of you. But you see Kyle Oosthuizen hunting that slipstream. We spoke earlier about the BMW being strong, but this is something that we have never seen before, Stephen. The BMW is struggling to get past the likes of a Mercedes. Now, we do know the Mercedes, beautiful V8 engine, the grunt it produces, we drove it, it's absolutely phenomenal. But the BMW, well, these two BMWs, the likes of Brugnout and Oosthuizen, are struggling to get the upper hand compared to the likes of other cars. We saw them fly past the earlier section of the race, and now they're stuck behind our third position of LaRue. Yes, I mentioned earlier, LaRue has the car underneath him, has gotten the pace, had some technical difficulties earlier in the season, and is proving now that once he's stabilized, he's able to take the fight to these two. I'm hoping I'm not speaking bad into the universe, but it seems to be working for the likes of LaRue. As Oosthuizen ducks again back into the substream, hoping to get pulled along hard onto the brakes for turn 1. Still, they're not even trying to fake a dummy and just sitting behind, hoping to hit his brake marks and getting close to the likes of that Mercedes.
Okay, I need to correct myself. He wasn't. Porsches don't use glycol. They use a water soluble to try and reduce wear on the engine. It's some pre-made mixture. But I was keeping a look on the likes of the Mercedes, as we do see likes of Jean Fiers look at getting a pass, as he's still ahead of Chris
Also
Stills.
leading.
Yeah, he's leading.
There was a switch. Stills had to pit to get that extra fuel done and dusted. The Fiers has jumped him.
And that has changed up the hypercar. But I'm also looking at the front of this Mercedes, and something's not looking right. He's not able to keep it stable under braking. I mean, we're going to take a look. While there's an ongoing battle of Kyle Oosthuizen in the toe, but watch the steering under braking. He will have little movement, left, right, trying to counter the car, and really not having that front end going and slowing down quick enough, but the rear seems to be sliding underneath him. That's requiring a lot of counter steer.
I wonder if the braking or the brake bias is maybe more mitigated forward to get that nose pointy as best as possible, get it slowed down as best as possible. But I'm kind of gonna be interesting on the inside. Oh, as I was singing the praises on the inside, the up and under goes the likes of Oosthuizen Leroux, hoping to make up for the issues that he had last season in the Hypercar, where he ran out of fuel. The first and only time we saw that, unfortunately not able to do it this time around. And now side by side drag race into turn 1. Who's gonna give up the ghost? Who's gonna be best on the brakes? We're hitting the brakes at the same time, side by side. Oh, beautiful side-by-side action, pushing it a bit onto the wide, and Oosthuizen losing out as Leroux says, I'm still here. You might have gone up and under, but guess what? I'm still able to get the drive out of turn 1, even though I might not have the optimal line.
Yeah, and Jeff Leroux once again was squirmy under braking. That Mercedes is not liking slowing down and is battling, and Carl Oosthuizen going and losing the rear on the BMW. I think a little bit of red mist coming into play there, and the driver's starting to feel the pressure. I do also want to point out, as we keep an eye on John Fierce with 10 minutes to go in this race, Chris Stills is gaining time. Arno Kraus nearly had a Toyota problem, like it nearly was at Le Mans. Actually, it was at Le Mans, where the Lexus and Toyota had it coming together many years ago. But Chris Stills is within eye shot of Jean Verfiers. This Peugeot that has been clocking some really good times now has an opportunity to go yet again for the victory, and will have no problem with Arno Kraus as he meets him on the straight.
Well, some good luck for Stolz there, but some bad luck for Fierce. But I thought a bit back. This year, the Toyota had unfortunately an incident with a Ferrari in the night practice at Le Mans this year, unfortunately going out of the Corvette curves, which is just after the Porsche curves. If you know the circuit, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't worry about it. We'll stick around and we'll teach you we'll teach you well over due course time. But we do mention a lot of times, Stephen, but Lexus, Toyota, funny enough, they are the same manufacturer. Lexus is just a luxury brand, where Toyota is the everyday as well as the sports division. But they are the same manufacturer, they are the same brand. So that's why normally you would see the Toyota team supporting the Lexus team if ever there is endurances, or even when it comes to the Toyota Supras being run in Japan. The Lexus team sometimes run those. So it's, I believe, my standard correction. But it's quite interesting. Same manufacturer, just different divisions. Same as Alpine and Renault are the same manufacturer. Alpine, the sports car, I believe. No, wait, Renault is the sports division, Alpine is the luxury side. But enough of that. But let's take a look at Jeff Ruin battling out here with the likes of Oosthuizen and getting closer to them as Steve is signaling something.
The other way of it, the Alpine is actually the racing division of Renault back in the day. So Renault was the luxury, easy driving. Alpine was the racing version, originally created as a bit of a write-off of a tax write-off by having the racing Alpine colors, and also gave them a little bit of freedom to play around with turbos, to play around with different engines, to play around with different suspension and such, that doesn't impact their customer base and doesn't impact on where they can race, by using the Alpine name as more of a test to the likes of the likes of Renault. But that being said, don't take it away. The modifications that Alpine had through the years has definitely put them on par. However, we got to talk about a battle that's going here. Michael van Rooyen in the Aston Martin, second place, has got a little less room now to play with, as Leroux and Oosthuizen have gained time on them. Macheka has clocked out of the battle and is currently running ahead in the GT3. Michael van Rooyen's been slowing down. Leroux has been gaining a little bit of pace, and Carl Oosthuizen is not going on those hard attacks, but is waiting and biding his time to try and get himself back onto the podium.
Well, it had to make sense for the likes of Leroux being under attack from Carl Oosthuizen that he will have to pick up his pace. Even though he might not think it's possible, he would have to in order to resist the relentless attacks that are coming from Oosthuizen's BMW. But now Van Rooyen will probably getting in his ear saying, listen, time to pick up the pace. The two guys behind you have picked up the pace in their battle. You need to pick up your pace in order to not be swallowed into their battle, as we have about 7 minutes left, or 6 minutes and 40 seconds left of this race. It's all about having to maximize your pace now in order to get to the very end. No more tire saving, no more fuel saving. Go to the very end, give it all. As you see on this onboard shot, exactly where second, third is in front of our fourth place star, which is Carl Oosthuizen. Carl Oosthuizen slipping into that slipstream of that big mighty V8 Mercedes on the long back straight, as no weaving coming from the likes of LaRue, just hoping to keep the straight down, hard on the brakes, throwing it into Parabolica, slowing it down, getting close under braking, and then back on the throttle as they exit out of Parabolica and onto the front stretch, and hoping to get a bit closer. But I don't think this BMW of Oosthuizen is able to really capitalize on anything. I don't know if I might be mistaken. Might be a bit of front end damage in that car. Might be wrong. Might be a refraction of the light on my side. We take a look. I might have missed a little bit.
I'm just looking at that Mercedes getting worse and worse under braking. And LaRue trying to go that little bit later. Now Carl Oosthuizen all over the back of him, making life rather difficult. And I wonder, is LaRue starting to lose that front end, not having the grip he needs to get in and out of the corners, and the rears starting to drive the car, starting to dictate where they want to go instead of the front where the steering's connected. I mean, this is like driving a forklift at the moment. It's rear steer all the way, especially under braking. Carl Oosthuizen to the inside, backed out of it, continues on the charge. In through Lesmo 1, missing out a little bit into Lesmo 2, but will have the charge down to Ascari, and possibly a look towards third place, as we've got 4 minutes and 48 seconds left of this race. As they charge down, this is going to be Michael van Rooyen licking his lips saying, thank you, please fight. I don't want you guys to get me.
No, absolutely not. He, the likes of Michael van Rooyen will be very, very happy in order to not get, not to have them closer. But Carl Oosthuizen really hoping to close that gap as the time is running out. The time is ticking away. About a 2 minute-ish, one could say, lap around here, meaning looking at the timer, there's about 2 more laps, maybe 3, as in GT racing we do not have a set timer, well, a set lap time, set laps we only have running until the timer runs out. So about 3 more laps left, and I'm pretty sure LaRue is hoping that white flag drops faster than anything else.
That's going to be looking over to Jim and saying, come on, please put the flag out already. Mildred Claessen's keeping an eye on the battle as well, because one mistake from these two that lands him up into the dirt, that Porsche is going to be a contender, sitting in the top 5 at the moment. Michael van Rooyen opening up a gap even further as Carl Oosthuizen back on the attack, tries to look for every opportunity to get the pass right underneath. He's stuck around the outside. Is it going to be enough? Oh, contact between the two. LaRue gets thrown out as he was under braking. He started getting that little bit of a wiggle, went over the front of Carl Oosthuizen, and unfortunately, a bit of a track cut.
And unfortunately, and I believe Carl Oosthuizen might be on the radio saying, listen here, he gained an unfair advantage, he has to get the time back, but all at the discretion of the game of how he will be penalized. And I think Jeff LaRue will be like, I'll take the rap on the knuckle, saying that's what it is. Bit of what it is, but the thing is getting knocked under braking, doesn't settle the car, and they are quite, well, the Mercedes is quite lucky to get away with it and not being put in the wall and having the race over. However, a bit of heartbreak to see how this is going to end up, but that has brought him closer to the likes of Michael van Rooyen with about 2 more laps left to go, I believe. It is now a flat-out dash until the very, very end. This beautiful Aston Martin is now hoping to secure second position and splitting the German brands in the middle on the top step, on the podium, by making German, British, German as the top 3 finishes in our class. But now, onto the power, onto the long front stretch for the penultimate time.
He's got a problem. He's trying to fuel save. He is trying to fuel save at the moment. Coast it in, trying to slow the car down. I think Michael van Rooyen is cutting in a little bit close with his car. He's starting to battle a bit. Going flat, but coasted for a long time into the corner. If we go to LaRue, he's also pushing. On the left-hand side, you'll see the two bars, the throttle, the braking, you'll see NRG. That is how much they've got left in the tank. And at the moment, LaRue's running a bit short. He is trying to push harder and harder, but at the same time, losing a little bit of drive that may compromise him quite badly. Carl Oosthuizen is in the fight up against LaRue. He's also running a bit low. So Michael van Rooyen, out of all three of them, has got a bit of room, but is taking it more cautiously. Andre has got plenty left in the tank. Crystal's sitting low. Jean Verveers sitting low as well as he leads. But I've got a question, as we do see Carl Oosthuizen on the inside of LaRue. He gets the pass done, but has he got enough in the tank to the end? Oh, it's contact between the two.
Both off into the Kinulator, being able to point the car the right way. That's broken rear wing gone. Oosthuizen, from starting at the back, hoping to avoid the carnage, goes into Ascari, hoping to make the move, exits Ascari without a rear wing, no rear deck, nothing, gone. That is a completely broken BMW. Monza Klaassen says, thank you very much. That's why I stayed behind. I'm going to take this fourth position from you and hope I can close down the likes of LaRue. But already onto the final lap now is our hyperclass, meaning that everybody's lap down, crossing the line now, will be receiving. Leader is on the final lap, meaning this is their final time around the Temple of Speed at Monza. This might be something. We didn't see the outside view of what happened there, unfortunately. But what I can only assume is what normally happens to Ascari is made the move. Fortunately, car got pushed out from that first curb onto the second curb where the light of LaRue was, and he doesn't need to back out. That's racing. Unfortunately, has cost Oosthuizen a good chance of scoring.
He's
good
DNF'd.
points.
He's out. Oosthuizen, car's got too much. They retired it. And that is the end of Oosthuizen, and that's going to play into the hand for Blicknote as he will continue on the drive. He's fighting out against Pretorius at the moment. Esteban Pretorius stuck on the outside as they continue side by side. Blicknote hoping to get every little bit of points possible. He's going to sit there with a smile and the radio, hearing that his championship fight has just gone a little bit into overdrive now in round 7 of the RaceFace.Pro Le Mans Ultimate Championship, seeing the remnants of the BMW on the side. I mean, that was contact between LaRue and the likes of Oosthuizen. Oosthuizen looked like he had the pass. He looked like he had it going. The Mercedes might have just tucked up underneath him, got that little bit of a twist. However, it was the BMW that landed in the wall. Done, dusted, race over. And LaRue's not out of the woodwork just as yet, because take a look who's aiming for a podium. Mordre Klaassen's first time racing LMU, switches to try and come in. Looks for the undercut, goes for the dive on the inside, couldn't get past LaRue. He got a little bit wily on the exit, tries to put the hammer down. Jaco Kutzer will look to try and clear both of them, and it is going to be the likes of LaRue watching in his mirror as he does hold on to third place. Mordre Klaassen takes fourth. Michael van Rooyen locks in first. Macheka holds first to the GTs. It's Jean Verveers and Crystals that take first and second. And Jaco Kutzer rounds out in third. But what a race and what a turn of events. Second last lap has now put the championship into jeopardy as we head towards round 8 next week. And I'm sure in pit lane there's going to be a few words said between drivers of, listen, that was a little too close for comfort. Maybe let's try and keep it off one another. But Cameron, that has been a race and a half. And honestly, we are in for a treat, in for our final heat of our series.
Well, as you mentioned there, Stephen, every driver that's probably going to gain the most out of this, with even finishing at 11th in the cup. Yes, he's about 72 points behind the likes of Carl Oosthuizen, who did get his first DNF now, but we do have the drop round also to remember about those, Stephen. But everybody from Dion Kopp, Johan Bluchnoot, Andrei Mateshka, Bagel Grobler, Jody Sedman, I'm looking at the standings here. The closer they are, the top 4 will be the most happiest. Even though there's a massive gap between them, it's still a chunk of points out of the championship leader. Carl Whistler is a one more mistake into the final round. That might be a bit too close to comfort. We do not even know. That is what is now got to be thrown into the air, and we're going to see how it is going to be settled, I believe. But it's going to be stuff that's got to be settled within the the stewarding office, unfortunately. If it does get reported there, it's something that we'll have to keep an eye on until we go to our final circuit, which is next week, actually. So, I don't know. We were here last year. Well, last season, where we had a shocker for Jeff Leroux running out of fuel and getting disqualified, or getting penalized and dropping down the field, robbing him of a podium. Now we see contact again, another moment between Leroux as well as Westhuizen. It seems like Monza is not Leroux's circuit, but it was absolutely shocking. I don't know. I'm a bit of bewilderment from my side, Steve. I don't know about you.
Well, if Leroux gets a penalty, that means he will miss out on that top 3, and it will mean that likes of our new driver, Mordred Clausen, will for the very first time land up in 3rd place here on LMU in the RaceFace.Pro Championship. We'll have a complete new driver to the sim in the series stand on the podium. Macheka, our overseas driver, has taken 1st place. Michael van Rooyen held on to 2nd, which is phenomenal to see the return of the Aston Martin to the sharp end of the field. 3rd place, depending on steward decision, may see Leroux with a little bit of a climb in the points, or Mordred Clausen going and taking some points away from the championship and taking his 1st podium here in the series.
Well, you mentioned it, Stephen. It is now something that will be in the hands of our stewarding office. We only saw the on-board, unfortunately, not being able to see the outside view of what has happened there. But I think it's time to just get a view here. We're gonna we'll start with bringing in our hyperclass cars, because there's a lot to be unpacked in both classes. But we're gonna start with the smaller side of our finishers, and that's, I'm going to bring in both of them, the likes of Crystals as well as Jean Verveers. So, again, it's a Delta Negative lockout. Jean Verveers, another member of the Delta Negative team. So, Delta Negative not running 2 cars, but 3 cars. So, that's something new to me. And I'm not sure if it's new to you, Stephen. But, Chris, Jean, welcome to the commentary box. Jean, you bringing joy to my Toyota heart by having a victory. Thank you very much. For a Toyota fan who has been heartbroken this entire season from real world racing, you brought us joy in the virtual world. Welcome. And thank you.
Much appreciated as well on my end. I think the race was a bit chaotic with everything happening. Poor Rian got taken out and Kutzer with a big incident. So yeah, I was picking up the scraps and then had my own crash. And then, some stop-go troubles, and Chris unfortunately had to do another stop because of his earlier stop. So, the things just kind of worked out together, and the Toyota could scrap together and win somehow. But, very happy.
Well, that's pretty much what Toyota does. All the bad luck falls onto the other competitors, and we just sneak on by. But unfortunately, not in real world the past few years with Toyota. Ferrari just being the
Fingers crossed.
Car. Well, we'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed.
But, Crystals, the top step finishes has come to an end. That is heartbroken. And just after I said you had a good run of no bad luck this entire season, you may fire me, I understand, for bringing commentators curse.
Oh, so it was your fault. You're the one I have to get my hands on after this race. No, I'm kidding.
I'm on a plane all the way to Dubai at this point in time. I'm just with that phone here. Steve would like to connect me this, but yeah, talk us through your race from your side.
Well, first of all, congrats to you on. Yes, there was a lot of misfortune for everyone, but I mean, he also had his own misfortune and made it count. So no, first of all, congrats to him, and I hope it's a bit of a confidence boost for him. He has a bit of a tough season so far, so it was good. It was fun at the end. We were chasing each other down, and obviously we were on Discord together, and complaining about who's getting worse traffic, and no, it was good fun at the end. Yeah, tough race from my side, but a good recovery, and I think I clinched the championship now as well. So I guess that's all that matters.
Well, I can only assume that. You never know what happens in the last round, especially at your most favorite circuit where all the bad luck started last year with your McDonald's Wi-Fi, as you have branded it. But you both were the only non-Ferrari, non-Italian branded hypercars on our grid, and you're the only two that finished. Does that mean that there's a bit of a bad luck for the Ferraris connected to Monza? I mean, last season we saw Jan unfortunately crash out in the Delta Negative Ferrari.
I mean, I took him out, to be honest. To be fair, I did take him out
tomato,
last
tomato,
season.
potato, however you would. It is bad luck, it looks like, for the Ferraris to race at Monza. Does that mean that we're going to see a switch in the cars for the Delta Negative team? I mean, the only team that has 3 drivers that we only found out today and running 3 different manufacturers.
I don't know. I don't know what Jan is planning on doing next season. The Ferrari has been very strong, for a while now. We're not entirely sure if that's changed with this new update. We'll see. But I'm a little bit salty with the Ferraris for being so fast lately. So if I can stop them and Jan can stop them from getting a win in Monza, then I'm happy.
Well, you have definitely proved that, Chris. But now, Jean, you spoke previously. You had a shot at a podium at Spa, and unfortunately getting into a bit of a tussle with the Omnius Gaming Ferrari of one. Don't remember which one it was. How does it feel to finally have that podium celebration in our top class, and not just podium, a overall victory?
Yeah, well, if I have to give up the 3rd place in Spa to get the first at Monza, I'll take that deal any time of the day. So happy with that. I think, me and Brandon had a close couple of battles in Sebring and Spa 2 weeks in a row. So, but yeah, these things happen. It's racing incidents. We just move on, go ahead. So makes the win sweeter. So happy about that.
Definitely makes the wins even more sweeter and just feeling better altogether. But I'm going to give the floor to you guys now. First, I'm going to give it to Chris, who's our second place finisher, and then on Jean, our winner of a hyperclass. So Chris, you know the drill. Jean, keep it PG, keep it friendly, and you're more than welcome to lay down a challenge to everybody out there in the virtual world who you feel you want to challenge on our LMU circuits.
Yeah, thanks, Cameron. No, again, just congrats to Jan for his first win. Well deserved, and unlucky to Jan who had the incident. We both obviously caught up in it, and unlucky for him. And he obviously couldn't continue. So sorry for him. And thanks everyone who's watching. Thanks all the sponsors for making this possible, and thanks to you guys for the stream. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Chris. And then over to you, Jean.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I'll echo the same sentiment where we'll thank the sponsors and you guys for week in, week out streaming as well, and keeping the races going, and the admin team behind the scenes as well. I'd like to send a shout out to my dad who's racing tomorrow in the ACC lobbies. Hopefully he can bring in a win in the class for Pro-Ams as well tomorrow. So we'll have Fafir 1-1 in Wednesday and Thursday. I think that'll be some record somewhere. Some extra motivation for him to push. But thanks to the team. Unfortunate for Jan. Thanks, Chris, for all the help always. And then, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Some good shout out and some good words and some good motivation within family there. I almost forgot that it's not your brother that's racing, it is your dad, with you coming through one of our earlier initiatives in terms of the Road to Pro initiative we had a few years back. But Jean Fafiers and Crystals, I'm going to let you guys go celebrate with your Delta Negative team in the garage and just comfort Jean Kleinans in, unfortunately, a race he will probably want to forget, but the curse that will live on for him and his Ferrari.
Thanks, guys.
Well, now, Stephen, let's bring in our 3rd place of our GT3s. Jeff Leroux, from heartbreak at Monza previous season to podium and heart-in-mouth moments in Season 2 in GT3. Walk us through this race for us.
Hey, how's it, boys? You guys good?
Yeah, we're good. A bit stressed after that close battle there, but tell us from your perspective, how was this race?
Oh, dude, I came in here. Monza's never been my favorite. Well, it's actually a favorite track, just never been a good result of mine here to get at Monza. So I'm actually quite chuffed with it. The race was actually lekker. Carl was coming back and forth with me. I think he was fuel saving or something because he came out the pits just behind me. And then, then he dived me on the first corner. That just didn't work out. And then he dived me again as a last attempt, I presume, on the last lap or second last lap. And you couldn't do that. There was no way that would even work out at all. So I'm surprised I still came out of it at least. But yeah, that was a very hectic move to do there.
Well, we did speak about here in the commentary box about that. It might be something that will be settled out in the steering office. It is something that we don't know what the final results will be. There's always the preliminary results and how that's going to affect how it will be. But, I mean, me and you spoke earlier, I believe this week or last week. Me and you ran across one another in the airport as we were heading between the circuits. You mentioned that you're having some issues on your side and having to get it sorted out. I believe this is your first race that we're broadcasting back after getting that sorted, and this is the performance you're putting on. I mean, from struggling to getting a podium, I mean, that must be something that makes you feel happy at least.
Yes, no, it was lekker. And the Oaks race lekker, yeah, I really have fun. I actually had to get a new fiber provider installed at the house, so they cut up the whole grass and put in new fiber lines, and I had to prove the old internet people that they were actually wrong. And now I'm connected and everything seems great.
Well, I'm always happy to hear that some technical issues have always been sorted out and that we're going to have some more action regarding the racing going on from all drivers out there and not having to struggle some stuff on your side. Yeah. But, Jeff, I'm going to give you the floor to give a shout-out to anybody out there you feel like you want to give a shout-out to. It's always PG and family-friendly, and you're more than welcome to throw down a challenge forever, or if you want to be out there in the virtual grandstand at RaceFace.Pro.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys, Stephen and Cameron, for doing the commentating on a lekker race. It was really good. And I just want to say thanks to all the sponsors like EG Evolved and Rhino Utility and Virtual Motorheads, just for supporting the sim racing community, because we are a small bunch, and I really appreciate all the support we can get to keep this circus going forward.
Well, we might not be the biggest traveling circus or most expensive traveling circus in the world. We do not want to take that cap from Formula One, but some great words there from Jeff LaRue. I'm going to let you go and go celebrate with your team there on the podium, and hopefully it stands when we see the results back again at Le Mans. But thanks again for joining us.
All good shot. Cheers.
Cheers. Now let's bring in the brave little Aston Martin that took on the fighting foes of the German manufacturers. Marco van Rooyen, welcome to the commentary box in that beautiful Aston Martin that broke the hearts of many racers last night and bringing some honor back to that beautiful car. How are you, and how has that race been treating you?
I'm great, thanks. So that was a great race. It was awesome, challenging. I must say, and the pace was good by Andre in front. I must say, in the end, Jeffrey was pushing me a bit. So yeah, and I was on like a bit of a fuel save in the last 4 or 5 laps because of my MFD was warning me that I was having a last lap critical. So I was like saving and driving. So that was good. It was good. Thanks, Cameron.
Bit of a speculation of what's going on here about what fuel saving is going to happen. I mean, Andre was fine with fuel in the front, and then we were speculating if you're having fuel saving or what's going on, and then compared to the cars behind you, you were a bit safer compared to them as they were going flat out and being able to close on you. But you mentioned there, earlier this year at Fuji, I remember we were speaking about you being in battle with these drivers, and now unfortunately having, I believe, an incident at Fiji which forced you to not get that podium, and then struggling a bit and now regaining that shape that you had at the beginning of the season. How does it feel to be back, or just getting that car there again?
Fuji, I think I was running first most of the time. Just before I went into the pits, I got my Cogatel happy, and then I lost a bit of time. So I ended up second at Fuji. The last week, unfortunately, due to work, I couldn't race. But now that I'm back in Monza again, one of my favorite tracks. Now it feels good. It feels good being in the front and being able to challenge at the, let's say, the upper echelon of guys. Feels good, eh?
Do believe that it will always feel good to challenge those fast guys up ahead there. But Michael, I'm going to give you the floor now. Give a shout out, lay down a challenge for anybody you want to out here in the virtual world of RaceFace.Pro. And yeah, floor's yours. Keep it family friendly and you're good to go.
Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, just a shout out to all the friends I race with. And the guys that got me here. Also, I asked Clayton, if you're watching, bud, come join us on LMU in the next season by RaceFace. Let's build a community and add more people, bud. So yeah, no, thanks everybody, and thanks for you guys that you're holding a good, let's say, good community, good races, and yeah, it's really great racing in the RaceFace series. Thanks for what you guys are doing.
Thank you very much, Michael, and a good challenge throwing out there. We always say, let's get more drivers out there and hopefully expand our hyperclass car a bit more, as we always love to see more hypercars out on circuit. But thank you, Michael, for joining us. I'm going to let you go and go celebrate with your team. Well done on a hard-fought second place.
Pleasure, and thanks you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good evening, guys.
Now let's bring in our international visitor, the flying Chechen in the flying BMW. Andre, welcome once again. And this time, having won this beautiful race at the Temple of Speed, how do you feel, and walk us through your race? If he's there, Andre, can you hear us? Might be experiencing some technical issues on this side, unfortunately. He was in the queue line. He was in the queue, and unfortunately, maybe experiencing some issues there on the side. But I believe, unfortunately, we'll have to let him go. Can't get through to him there. But I believe that is, unfortunately, that's a good race that he has led all the way from start to finish, putting up a good battle with the likes of Monte Class and swapping back and forth between the two of them on lap 1 and 2 and following close to one another. It was definitely one that can be seen as something proud for our international driver, and hoping to just another feather in the cap of all these achievements that he has had on both R Factor and LMU already. But Stephen, I do believe that brings us to the very, very end of our second to last race of our LMU Season 2 Championship, with our next race being a track that I love the most, even though it didn't treat me well this year so far. But before we get to speaking of that circuit, I want to get your final thoughts on tonight's race.
Well, tonight was an interesting one. It was a race that people were not sure was going to happen. We're sure they were going to try and drive. There was lots of risky moments up and down through the field, but some very good battles up through our GT3s and hypercars. Great returns to see of drivers that originally wrote their cars off were able to get them back out on the track and fight their way through, like Crystals, like Yoko Kutsa, the likes of Daniel Gillett being one for our GT3s. But also, I'm just thoroughly looking forward to seeing the end of the championship, crowning the winners that are well-deserved in this entire LMU Championship here at RaceFace.Pro, considering it's Season 2 and that the sim is very, very, very new, just breaking out of its beta line and getting into 1.0. I am curious to see what the drivers are going to think for our final circuit, because it's a legendary track. We spoke about the Temple of Speed with having GT3s and hypercars, but whenever you talk about having prototypes and GT cars, having the likes of GTE of old, having the likes of GT1, GT2, GT3, Group C, all going and racing, you cannot go and have that all in thoughts, because round 8, our final round of the season, all for championship points, all for gold, will be at Cameron. Where is it going to be? Out in a country.
The beautiful, phenomenal Circuit de la Sarthe, or better known as Le Mans. A circuit I love the most, buried deep in my heart. Grew up on motorsport racing on that side. Well, not grew up, but grew up watching it on motorsport, on the motorsport side. And one that has taken the names to the history books and glorified many manufacturers as being the best cars in endurance racing, from Ferrari to Ford to Porsche to Audi to finally Toyota after a heartbreaking moment in 2016. It's a track that has broken the hearts of many, but also brought glory and happiness to many hearts that have felt that pang of pain in themselves. So, Circuit La Sarthe, the circuit that will be the showdown and the final round of our LMU Season 2 Championship here, and I can't wait to see it. Always a lot of knowledge going on inside my head that I want to drop as soon as we go live, and Steven knows that. He's probably going to duct tape my mic shut at one point.
Well, all I want to do is bring out the Nissan Delta Wing or the Panos LMP car, but that's on the sim, so I'll settle for a LMP3. Why not? Because they're just so much more fun. That being said, a massive thank you to our sponsors, Rhino Utility, SBR, Simulator Cave, Virtual Motorheads, and EG Evolve Simulator Rigs. If you are keen to get involved in racing, please do look up the companies. If you want to have the best look into what the hardware does, Virtual Motorhead's got you covered out on YouTube. And if you're looking for the best deals, Simulator Cave and EG Evolved have got you covered. And if you want to join in with the racing, it might be the end of this season for the moment, but we do have plenty coming down the line. 4th of October, we're going to be heading over to Kailami for the official RaceFace Midrand 570. Infamous, famous, craziness, all there. 9.5 hours of racing on the 4th of October. But tomorrow night, we go in towards our ACC Championship Round 7, and Pro-Am are off the rails, and how close they are, along with our gold and silver, both are being broadcasted tomorrow night at 8:10. Make sure you're there to catch all the action as they battle their way around. But, that being said, anyone that races in these championships does get their name into the lucky draw for a 16,000 Rand rig, sponsored by Simulator Cave, a full T-slot aluminium. And if you know how amazing it is to have that modularity to come in favor with something a little bit more of comfort. And also, you can then follow it up, go and purchase some hardcore racing gear that's come out, because you can't get away without a button box, a steering, a pedals, a screen, a PC, a console. Oh my heavens, I can go through the list. But Cam, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary box. And honestly, it's been an exciting one. From myself, Stephen Koenig, and the amazing voice behind LMU, Cameron de Bastos, we'd like to say thank you very much to all our admins, and most importantly to you out there in the virtual grandstands that keep us going and keep the racing hot and alive. Thank you so much for joining us. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, and like always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and Cameron,
Good night, everybody.
there we go.